Hello, today we're doing the ultimate test, professional samples versus free samples, with this piece you can see on the screen. Now, this is just a piece of library music I composed a while ago, and what I've done is I've done the top version, which is the original, which is with all my professional samples, and then I've translated it all into free versions of the samples. So everything from Logic's own samples to BBC Discover, some labs, and I don't know if I have any piano book in there, but it's definitely all free, including all the tools to mix and master it, I guess, at the end as well, and the reverb. So literally, when I say free, I mean everything in there is free. And with the professional, I believe everything is actually paid. And so let's look at actually what I've used. So with the professional samples, the majority of the samples are the BBC Symphony Orchestra Pro. So everything you see saying BBC in brackets refers to the Pro version. So this boy. And then the solo all refers to solo strings, at least regards to the strings right here. And then if we move into the brass, I believe all of them except the solo horn are BBC. I believe the horn is specifically the Majestic horn, specifically the Kontakt version. I know it's now on StimePlayer, but for some reason I prefer using it in Kontakt. I don't know why. It's just how I've always done it. It's how I originally bought it as well. And I believe the rest are BBC if we just scroll through those. Yep. And then if we move on to our percussion, we have a mix as well. We have specifically Spitfire's percussion for like the marimba. We have the orchestral grand, which is another little one by Spitfire Audio, an older one. The rest, well, the tubular bells, again from the percussion library, and metal from the percussion Easter Island. We've got Albion 1, one of my favorite patches from Albion 1. We actually have something by Orchestral Tools as well. I absolutely love this product. It's from Metropolitan Arc 1. I bought it separately. It's the, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce that right, it's the Kepernicus percussion. You get some epic hits. And so that's a really fun little patch there. Let's mute that again quickly. Kontakt, that's very descriptive. There we go, some Darwin percussion from Albion 1. And the harp is definitely the BBC Symphony Orchestra right there. So I think the percussion's the biggest mix. And actually the biggest struggle I have actually with translating the pro into the free was the percussion section. Sadly, I find you just can't quite get the same sort of control with the timpani rolls. I just struggle with that section, and I find the strings can be a bit tinny as well. So that's all the paid stuff. Moving along into the free stuff, we can see anywhere it says BBC, this is referring, well, I thought it was referring to, the first one I click on says lab, so my labeling system's a little off. But we have BBC Discover. We have, it must have been a last minute choice to change this over to labs. The strings shorts to give a bit of variety. More BBC, BBC, BBC. We have some Logic's own strings. This, I believe, is from the studio string section. What else do we have here? This is all BBC. Do we have anything else? Labs. Some different strings. Studio strings, studio strings, studio strings. So that's our string section there. Woodwinds, we have Logic's own piccolo there. We have some more BBC Discover for the rest of the stuff in there. So a lot of this really is going to be testing Discover versus Pro. Logic's own horn from the Studio Collection. And for the horns, we have, I believe, the French horn sample there. These are just shorts. More BBC, more BBC, a sampler for the tuba, which is Logic's own. And then finally, let's move into the percussion, which is where I struggled the most. The marimba is BBC Discover, more BBC Discover for cymbals. Timpani is a sampler. This is timpani crescendos. And then we have a normal timpani for hits, I believe. Yeah, single strokes. And then we have, I know it says that we have a paid one, but we don't. This is something from and it's multiple different patches. I believe this is from Dynamo patch, which I absolutely love, and I did a whole video about free percussion, and this, in all honesty, came out top. It's such a beautiful patch and contains some absolutely gorgeous percussion instruments, so I would highly recommend. If you've not got this, definitely download it. It's free, so cannot complain there. And then for our piano, I believe we just have a Logic one. Yes, the classic piano. So that's the samples. As you can see, if I just get rid of everything, this is no simple piece. There is a lot to it, especially with regards to the strings. And if you actually look at the nitty-gritty, especially with the free, you really had to get into those velocity changes, and sometimes to the actual extreme as well. Especially with the shorts, you really had to go all over the place to really bring out the most. So you can see there, and it's a bit copy and paste, but for each section I've really worked on it. For the legatos, again, you really have to get in there and work the modulation, work the dynamic fader to really draw out the most out of these sounds. I believe this is one of the studio strings from Logic's own. And so if I was quite literally to highlight this all and show you exactly what goes into it, to literally highlight that all, press E and zoom out of that, you can see just all the different velocity changes, all the modulation going on there. Of course, a bit of sustain for our piano that's in there. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I could probably do a lot more. Note, this is my interpretation, that a lot of this really I feel is down to time and skill. I didn't want to spend too much time on it because I am quite busy, but I spent as much time as I felt I could within the time frame. I think that's another big difference between free and pro. I almost feel you don't have to spend as much time because you have the round robins, you have the different dynamic layers. You don't have to get in to the detail as much, and it's a lot quicker process, at least in my opinion. I guess before we start playing it, with regards to actual mastering, because this is a bit of a weird patch, because the way I've done it, I've had to put the pro in one file and free on another. So free, when I actually find it, put a little bit of EQ on there. I felt that it was a bit muddy, so lowered the bass, hired the highs, a little bit low on the mids as well, although the strings were a bit too trebly, so I had to EQ them down specifically a little bit. We also have the Platinum Orchestra compressor. I stuck that on as well. I think it's a really beautiful one, and it's free, comes with Logic. And then finally, my absolute favorite reverb, we've got Space Designer with the Ancient Church. I love that reverb on the output there. With regards to Pro, I've simply stuck Ozone 9 on. Absolutely love this tool. It basically does the mastering for you, and so we can see all the EQ in there specifically for the Pro. And then I've stuck a little bit of neon reverb to bring everything together with regards to the professional stuff. So really, this is one extreme to another. And I think the really interesting thing to see is to see how much of a difference is it. Is it quite small, or is it quite large? I guess we'll leave that up to you to decide. So without further ado, let's actually look at these pieces. I think let's start with the free and then move in and out of the professional. To me, the Pro just sounds more fuller, so much more depth to it, so much more detail, and the percussion, of course, there's so much more depth, more realism, that room, that space, you can really hear it. It really sounds like, oh wow, there's a big orchestra there playing. While the free one, to me, I'm sure if I had maybe a bit more skill, I might be able to get it sounding a bit better, especially with the EQ and mastering. My EQ and mastering skills are not the best. They're okay, they're mediocre. I call myself a Joe Blog composer for a reason, because I'm just a Joe Blog guy. I'm not the best, I'm not the worst, but I'm trying. And I feel like this is a realistic representation of maybe what a Joe Blog person could do. In this situation, I could be very wrong, but really, I think it is evident that the Pro version is better. But in there, you probably have well over 1,000, maybe close to £2,000 worth of software, which includes the mixing and mastering, the reverbs, the Ozone, BBC Symphony, the percussion, the string library, not including Logic Pro X and all the other bits and bobs. And so really what you're saying is this is probably £2,000-3,000 worth versus something free. How big of a difference is it? I'll really let you determine. I know in the beginning, actually, I think it really could be down to taste which you prefer. Because that's actually a really nice sound. The free really does come across quite nice. I think the Pro is definitely a little bit sharper. You can definitely hear the detail, especially like later on over here. And I know those other little details in the professional that weren't in the pro, the flutter tongue, which we just heard as well in the professional. I couldn't replicate that with the free version. And maybe if I dug deep enough and spent more time, probably, but that's another thing. I felt I was doing so much more work with the free, so much more work in the details, while the professional, everything was there at my fingertips. I didn't have to worry so much. Overall, what do you think? Which one do you prefer? I probably could have done a lot better with the free one if I spent a lot more time. But as again, if we were to say I probably did spend about equal amount of time on both, if not probably more on the free, the actual creation of it, of course, with the professional. And then I dropped down everything into the free. Comparing actual side by side, if we look at the strings in the free, and compared to the professional as well, you'll notice there is a bit of a difference, specifically because of I couldn't find specific sounds, or I just didn't find replicating it actually did much in certain situations. If you look at certain sections as well, if we move later on into the piece, highlighting all that, so that's simply just legato lines playing, but then trying to find more legatos down here, you couldn't find them as much, so you will notice some have more in some sections while some in the other, but I did try my best to replicate it as best as I could. So I'll leave it there. This has been the professional samples versus the pro. I think the verdict really is the pro is better, but is it £2,000-3,000 better when we can get a nice sound, a good sound still with the free? But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.